Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to be showing you how to make melodies or chord progressions and melodies as a beginner in FL Studio. I'm not going to talk your ear off like I do in most videos. We're just going to get straight into it. So as you can see, my BPM is at 140. I'm going to leave it at that for right now. Just opened up a project, and I'm also using a closed grand piano from a direct wave, and I did throw a little reverb on it just because it kind of helps with coming up with the ideas. So today we're going to focus on a 6-5-1-3 progression, and I'm going to lay this down in the key of E minor. I've been in E minor a lot these last few weeks. One thing that you should know in E minor is you're using all white keys except for the F natural. You're going to use F sharp, also known as G flat, as one of the keys. We'll start off with counting these out, the scale degrees, and the first one is going to be E as 1. Then we got F sharp or G flat as 2. And we go to G natural as 3. Then we got A as 4, B as 5, C as 6, and D as 7. And once we get back up here to E, it's going to be the 1 again. When we talk about scale degrees, we're talking about the number in which the note is in that scale. So if we're going to do a 6-5-1-3, we need the 6th note of the scale, which is going to be the C. So we'll start with the C. Then the 5 is going to be next. Then the 1. And then the 3. And these are going to be the chords that we start out with, or the notes to the chords that we start out with. We're not going to do any augmented chords or any diminished chords. And I did that on purpose because I did want to keep this very simple and very beginner friendly. So we're going to build our chords from there, and we're going to start out with the C, which is C. Then the next chord is going to be, or the next note is going to be E. Then the next note is going to be G. This is going to be a C major triad. And as you can see, there's 3 spaces in between here, 1, 2, 3, and then there's 2 spaces in between here. That's going to make it a major chord. And then we're going to go with the B next. So we go B, D, and then F sharp or G flat. And this is going to be a minor chord. So you got the 2 notes in between here and the 3 notes in between here. Makes that a minor chord. And the next note is going to be this E minor. So we go E, G, E, G, and B. This is going to be an E minor chord. As you can see, again, once again, the 2 spaces here and the 3 spaces here. And then we got the G. We'll go B, and then we'll go D. And this is a G major chord. So you got the 3 spaces and the 2 spaces. These are all the triads of these chords, and this is what they sound like. And these chords are actually very basic chords, but if we want to kind of give them more of an R&B style and whatnot, we can add what's called a 7th to each of these chords. What I mean by 7th is this is the root of that chord, which is the 1. Then this is the 3rd of the chord. This is going to be the 5th of the chord. And to make it a 7th, we're going to go up. We're going to skip the next note in the scale, which would be this A, and we're going to go straight to the B. And now this is a C major 7th chord, and it sounds like this. As you can see, there's the 3 here, 2 here, and 3 here. We'll do the same thing here. We'll go 1, 3, 5, and then we'll go and make this a 7 by adding this A. No. And then we'll go here. We got the 1, 3, 5, and then we'll go and add this D. This is now a 7. And then we'll go here, the 1, 3, 5, and then we'll go up to the G, or the F sharp or the G flat. And that's going to make this the G major 7th chord. Now, these chords are kind of far from each other. Let's go ahead and bring these down an octave kind of. These notes are kind of far away from each other here and here. It's kind of a big jump, and we don't want it to be a big jump. So let's work on the voicings of these. So what I mean by working on the voicings, each one of these notes is a voice in the chord. And if we want to make these chords a little closer to one another, we'll change some of the voicings. So I'll take this 3rd, maybe bring it up an octave. Let's take the 3rd here. We can bring it up an octave. Now with these two, these are pretty low, but what we can do with these is we could take this third, we'll bring it up an octave, and then we can also take this fifth and we'll bring it up an octave, and now these notes are a little bit closer to each other as they're walking down. And then maybe take this third and bring it up, and it's going to be the exact same note here, and we get this. All of these are different inversions of the same chord. Now, something that we could do also to give these chords a little bit more life, instead of just having these chords play straight like they're playing now, we could actually kind of give it a bit of a rhythm to it, right? So what I mean by give it a rhythm, we can kind of change the length of some of the notes inside the chord, or we could change the length of the entire chord itself. So for example, if we were to change some of the note lengths, we could say maybe go here, bring this in just a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll just hit Alt and I'll grab it and just kind of bring it in some. And then I'll do the same thing with this one. We get, maybe you do the same thing here, bring this one in, and bring this one in some as well. Maybe even bring this one in a little bit more. And that right there in itself has already given us a little bit of rhythm. But what we could do is we could also add more notes inside this. We're working here with a major seventh chord, but we can also do a ninth. So for example, if we go 1, 3, 5, 7, well, 7 here, we can add a D in here, and that's going to make it a ninth chord, and maybe even make this ninth hit with the 5 or the 5th. Kind of have those hit together at the same time, and we get, maybe I could bring this in some more, give us a different little rhythm here. We can also play around with some of the other notes inside of that, or some of the other notes inside that chord. So for instance, we have the D here, but we can also have a D here, and maybe even bring it down some to hit with the A, and we'll maybe even bring it back some more. Since these two share a note with each other, it's perfectly fine, and we're just going into the next note there. So now something else that we can do with this is we can add notes on top of the scale just to kind of make it a melody. But before we even do that, let's go ahead and kind of make these sound a little bit more live, a little bit more realistic by adjusting the volume. Now what I like to do is I like to do it normally manually, but there's a quicker way to do it. If you highlight all these and then you hit Alt R, it's going to bring up this little tool here. And if this is highlighted, just unhighlight pattern. On your first time bringing it up in FL Studio, the pattern and the level is going to be highlighted. But if you turn that pattern knob or that pattern button off, it's just going to work with the volume here. And it's just going to adjust those volumes some. So we'll do the same thing, hit accept here, and we'll do the same thing here. And what I'll also do is I'll take these and I'll just bring them down some, make them a little softer so that these two chords here hold a little bit more power to them when you hear them. So we'll go something like, and we can even go inside maybe this one and kind of add or cut up some of the notes here. So let's cut up this G. So this G is also played right here. So we can cut this up a little bit, maybe down here, and see what we get. Yeah, I think I like that. Now that we have that, we can actually go and start making a top melody at the top. And top melodies don't have to be very complicated at all. You can easily just use notes that are already in the chords that you're already using. So for instance, in this C major 11th chord, or I'm sorry, C major 9th chord, we already have a C, a D, a G, I'm sorry, a C, a G, a B, a D, and an E. One of the things that I like to do is I like to start with the 5th. So for instance, the G is going to be the 5th of this C major 9th chord, and we can just go up here and add a D. I'm sorry, a G. Let's go up 2 octaves. and just kind of either walk down the scale, walk up the scale. Just try to avoid jumping too far. Say for instance, like this note and then jumping up here to the E or the D. Even though we're using the D, we don't have to jump up that far because this D is much farther than this D. This D is much closer, and we can actually just kind of walk down to it. So for instance, we use the G, the F sharp, G flat, go to the E and to the D here. And walk back up maybe. And that's a very simple melody, and we can actually just take that and repeat it all over again here. And the reason this is going to work is because these are already using notes that are in the scale, even though these aren't the exact same chord notes in the chord, but some of them do share some of the notes. So for instance, we have a G here, and we also have a G here. We have a D here, and we also have a D here. So they're already sharing notes in there. So we got... And that's just pretty basic, pretty simple. And it doesn't have to be like that. Like personally, I wouldn't keep that. I would change up this second half. So for instance, we'll do something like... What I like to do is I like to look at the notes that are in this chord and the notes that are in this chord, and I like to determine, you know, what notes do they share. Number one, it's going to be the D that they share, and they also share a B. And so I think it would help if maybe we drop the B in here, because B is already going to the next note. We do something like this. And since B is in here, we can add this D next, because we're already using the D down here. And maybe not even start it right there. You know, having some space on the end, you don't have to start each note on the downbeat. You can even move them around some. So for instance, instead of leaving this here, I maybe bring it out to here some, and even just kind of let it ring out a little bit more. And just walking down the scale. I like to add chords, or I like to cut up some of the notes that are already in the chord. So if we go down here, we can play with some of these chords here. So we'll leave this how it is and maybe add some notes in here. So cut up some of these notes here. So we'll go here and maybe something that I'm thinking. Cut this note, maybe cut this note, and then add a note in between that's in the scale. See what kind of walk up we get. Cut this note here. Just kind of repeating. It's okay to repeat some notes in there. And then maybe add a note here, walking back down. And cut it up here. Well, let's move this note some. And cut it up here. We get like a different little vibe here. And something that I like to do as far as going back into the beginning or back to that first note, you'll notice that this is a C here. Something that you could do, you could either put a note above C or below C. We have the D here, but we're already using the D here. So maybe if we try adding a B down there, so let's just kind of copy one of these notes and put the B down here and see how it loops back into the beginning. And that's so soft there. Maybe bring it up a little bit more, or maybe just bring these down some. They don't have to be that hard. And we can just kind of play around with what we have. But as you can see, we're not using too many different notes. We have a regular melody. What we could do is we could take these notes here and then just bring them up an octave. And now we have a melody, a top melody player. Maybe bring it up 2 octaves here. And now we have a top melody that we just made from the notes below. Now, there's all kind of ways that you can go with this, but let's just say this is what you want to do. It sounds a little bit better if you play it in, but if you can't play it in, once again, just go ahead and adjust some of the volume on the notes here. And let's just hear what we got. Something else I like to do is I like to kind of double up on some notes, or should I say harmonize some notes. So right here we're using the G, and a good harmony note for the G could either be the B here, or it could be the E here. What we would do is we would kind of bring it in just a little bit, so just drag it in some and bring the volume down a little lower, and they'll kind of hit at the same time and see what we get. And we can do that same thing, bring it up, the B here, and let's see what it sounds like there. And it almost just gives like this kind of sweet sound to it. And you could do that with any of the notes here. You could do that with this note as well. So maybe just copy it here. And it doesn't have to be a harmony as in the third. You can go up maybe even to the fifth and do the same thing. And lastly, just take these bass notes here. Let's just highlight all of these bass notes, and or root notes, should I say, and we'll put them in the bass. So just click Shift and then Control and click the arrow down. And now you have these notes in the bass, and it's going to kind of fill out that spectrum for you, son. You know, you can build on this as much as you like, but the best thing is to just keep it simple. It's not too much going on in the first part, but we do have those notes kind of moving because we have some movement in these, so we don't need much here. And this has a little movement in the beginning of it, but the most movement is at the end. And then these don't have any movement at all, but we have this movement up here, and then this doesn't have any movement at all either, but we do have that one note that basically picks up and carries back into the loop. Now, if you want to advance these chords even more, something that I like to do is I'll just go back in and cut up some more. So like, for instance, I'll cut up this note here, and let's just see what we get here. Maybe bring the volume down on it some. And add some more notes in it that are in the scale here. So something like this. And kind of walk it up some. Maybe do something like cut it here. It's either way you want to go with it, but that's basically a simple breakdown of a good way to kind of create melodies for a beginner. You know, if you don't really know the scales that well, you can always just kind of highlight the scales using these tools up here. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you do have any more video suggestions for me, make sure you drop those in the comments, because I'll be more than happy to make a video to explain any of this to you. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all in the next video.